What up?
Hello.
Welcome. Episode 337. Tonight's presentation is by Steven because Steven was a very naughty boy and he missed out on the uncanny shenanigans for 2 weeks. And of course, we have Spider who's basically sleeping. Nobody knows what that guy's doing. Over there, he's falling asleep.
Just sleepwalking through life.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, myself, Robert Solomon tonight. Cloning DNA data and the future of identity. Sounds like a book from our award winning author friend Steven. Steven, go ahead and take it away.
All right. So tonight we have three big threads tonight. We're going to start with a corporate mystery. Why did Blackstone, a real estate giant, buy up millions of DNA samples through Ancestry? Then we're going to go over to the Human Genome Project and how mapping our genetic code might have opened doors too big to ever close, and how fiction like Metal Gear Solid tried to warn us about this. And finally, Dolly the sheep and the rise of organ cloning, showing us how far science has really gone. We'll skim some articles, I've saved some quotes, and then we'll throw it around the table for some thoughts. You guys ready?
We're ready.
All right, we're going to start with Blackstone. So they acquired Ancestry.com for $4.7 billion. That's millions of DNA records under one private equity company. And here's where it gets really uncanny. All right. People always confuse Blackstone with BlackRock, as we did a couple weeks ago. Now, BlackRock is the spinoff. So think of it like Blackstone is the origin where the monkey originated from, where where he was trapped in, and BlackRock is the stone that falls off and allows him to escape. That's one fun way to look at it. But Blackstone is actually the parent. So why does BlackRock usually get tied to all the conspiracy theories revolving the Illuminati? So maybe we need to look deeper into their parent. So tonight I've got an LA Times column here titled "Why Spend Billions for Ancestry's DNA Data If You Don't Plan to Use It?" So I'm going to read a part of it. And this one didn't have any photos with it, so I'm just going to read the quote here. But if you look down in the description after the episode is over, we do have a link to the article. So, investment firm Blackstone acquired genealogical site Ancestry for $4.7 billion. The company says it has 18 million people in the world's largest consumer DNA network. You don't spend $4.7 billion unless you have a plan to make it back. And more, said one critic. Blackstone insists it has no intention of mining DNA data, stating, Blackstone has not and will not access user DNA and family tree data. Doing so was never part of our investment thesis, period. But bioethicists push back. Changing leadership or new business opportunities could shift that stance. The experts note that the real value lies in the genetic database itself, not just subscription revenue. So, Blackstone says no data mining, but critics say the real prize isn't subscriptions, it's the DNA itself. What do you guys think? Would a private equity firm spend billions on ancestry records if not for the DNA? Like, why else might they acquire it? Let's go ahead and start with you, Rob. It's a good question, isn't it?
I think maybe because if they ever wanted to start their own DNA firm, they could always use that as a backdrop because, I mean, obviously they're using the DNA for something. Let's not
Yeah.
front here. But to be fair, anybody can have our DNA. You get your blood
Yep.
drawn from
The hospital.
hospital, they got your DNA.
Yep.
So I don't see them making a gaggle of super soldiers based on the three of us sitting here, right?
No, they want
But
special people, right?
but what I think, and this is to get them hats on, boys.
Oh,
Your hats on. Your hats on. There it is. I think they're using it to try to understand people's DNA better. The
yeah.
secrets of the DNA and why so many people have different forms of DNA and different strands of it. Why this, why that, and why their family also has that. That's what
That,
I think it's for. If
yeah.
like I said in response to your answer, maybe if they were starting their own DNA firm,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, where they do it with some medical aspect behind it.
That actually does make a lot of sense, and I have seen recent videos talking about how we actually do have like residual memories from our ancestors. Like they've actually proven that with science recently.
Yes.
All right. And Spider, what do you think about this?
2 points to make. It's not a new phenomenon to try to collect genetic data on people.
Yeah.
There were multiple, not just in certain countries, but there were multiple eugenics programs going on in the 40s
Yeah.
upwards through the 60s.
Yeah.
We know what those were.
And those were the precursor to this kind of thing because they didn't understand quite. They knew about blood, they knew about bloodlines, they knew about ancestry, but they didn't quite know about DNA yet. It was the stepping stone to that.
Exactly.
And the goal of all that, while it's tempting just to say it was all to make perfect soldiers and super people, it was more not to make people of a certain kind better, but to take out the qualities that made certain people in their eyes worse.
Yes.
It was to clean out what they saw as inferior bloodlines,
Yes.
which would then philosophically automatically make everybody more perfect people because they wouldn't have the inferiority in their blood anymore. So you weren't really looking for all Captain America, Hulk style people. You were just looking for people who didn't have those bad qualities. And to an extent, that's still sort of the goal. Because when we talk about DNA research and genetic things, and we talked about CRISPR not too long ago, we talked about being able to catch genetic mutations and diseases like Down syndrome or ALS or different things that can develop over time. And the goal of that is to screen that out and perhaps repair it so that whoever's born doesn't have that to begin with. So if you look at it, and that's not to say that the goal of eugenics was always a rosy thing and it's meant to improve everybody, because again, you have to look at who can afford some of these things. Who's going to be able to afford to have perfect children, to have perfect families, perfect family trees? It's not going to be me. It's probably not going to be any of us, you know?
Yeah.
So, and it just, the other thing is, would you want to? Like, I had no interest in having any special things screened for before my daughter was born. I just wanted to make sure she was born healthy. I didn't care about anything else. If she came out with something that made her different, well, we'll deal with that. We'll take care of her like that. You know what? It's fine. It's just how people are.
Yeah.
But if you want to clear off all of that stuff, the procedures involved are not going to be cheap. And it's almost going to push us towards a master race scenario, whether we like it or not, which is kind of, on the one hand, you want to have better people, but on the other hand, you don't want it to be at the expense of other people because that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
The other point, and I'll try to cut this a little short because I'm going on a little bit,
You're good.
is again data storage.
Yeah.
Another point that I made in one of the last shows was that DNA holds massive amounts of information. Now, right now, of course, it's being used for information that runs our bodies and to keep us going and to help us grow and do what we do. But just think of the ways you could use that if you could insert information about numerous other topics completely unrelated that you could then retrieve later, like a USB or something like that. Just
Or a
straight
large
out your
language
bloodstream,
model.
and how to encapsulate it in a way that it won't interfere with your bodily functions. It won't change the DNA strand. It's just stored within the confines. And that's a big deal right now, too. Because who knows, there might be information like that already in the blood that we don't know about from however many ages past. It's all conjecture and hypotheticals. And that's partially the other part of the goal, I think, is to find out what's in there. If there is something already stored, is that what the ancestral memory really is? Is it actual data passed down through a bloodline, or
That's
is it,
interesting.
who knows? So obviously, both of those things are things that a modern corporation, especially in the United States, is going to want to profit off of.
Yeah.
It's not going to be something anybody's going to do for free, because healthcare is corporate now. It's always going to be corporate now. Even if they move to a universal healthcare model, somebody's still going to have to pay for it. And there's going to be companies involved. There's going to be CEOs. There's going to be doctors providing a service, and there's going to be patients who are the customers. And that's what it's going to be. And that's going to continue as we explore DNA.
Yeah. Now, it does have medical uses, as you've both stated, but it also, as James stated a moment ago, does have military uses as well, and they could be developing a weapon to affect certain people potentially, or there could be other uses for it. And as I believe, as with anything, it has many uses and that could be, good for the world or bad for the world, and it's up to us as individuals to, gain the knowledge to use certain technologies that are available to the public, at least, and use them in good ways. So, it's just a complicated issue, because even at the end of the day, you make a good point, Spider, about how it could be used to like store information. And I've heard that even Google is starting to run out of, data storage for their servers. So that actually is a good theory, but it still makes me wonder at the end of the day, what does a company focused on, like building, why would they need so much data storage? That's, the thing that still sticks out to me is why exactly would they need all that data storage? Unless maybe they're planning to start some sort of cloud service and lease it out to people, maybe. But I'm not sure. Have you got any ideas on that, either one of you?
Just a quick one to throw it out. I know somebody's already thought about it, but oh yeah, if you can use people as massive storage of information, then it's going to be exactly like a Matrix situation where
Yep.
everybody's basically a big battery full of data.
I've seen
And
that one
I
around.
think that's a bit much. I think that's getting a little bit too sci-fi and way far
Yeah.
into the future for like I will never see that future. So
Yeah.
I don't care. But I'm sure people have thought about it, and it's a
Yeah.
worry on some people's minds.
Rob, have you got any ideas on that?
Not really, to be fair, because the
All
only
right.
thing that you could do is if they can find a way to extract data, then you're just going to have experimentations. If they find a way to
Yeah.
store data, then you're just going to have experimentations. If they
No
find a
matter what
way
they do.
to, yeah, no matter what's going to happen, something has
Yeah.
to happen with that information. And it just depends on who gets their hands on it first, to be quite fair.
Yeah. And that's what all this AI stuff is about, is, data collection at the end of the day. All right. So now we're going to move on to human genome and connect this all together. So in 2003, the International Consortium announced it had basically finished mapping the entire human blueprint. That's when DNA became more than mysterious code. It became something we could analyze, monetize, maybe even weaponize, as James suggested a minute ago. And here's where it gets uncanny, you might say. Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear Solid came out before and during these breakthroughs in the 80s and the 90s. And in those games, you had genome soldiers, shadow governments, and the Lalilulelo controlling scientific progress from the shadows. And they were basically, the stand-in for the modern day, what we call, the shadow government, the deep state, or the Illuminati. So my question is, was Kojima warning us in fiction about what was happening in reality? So I've gotten a quote from an analysis from a website called Game Developer that puts this into perspective. So this article says the first Metal Gear Solid title certainly doesn't pull any punches in addressing deep issues: political corruption, cybernetic limbs, gene therapy, and even genetic engineering. Kojima frames scientific advances as double-edged. Depending on who wields them, they can save or destroy. Early in the game, gene therapy is portrayed as medicine, removing disease genes and splicing in beneficial ones. But by mid-game, We see the same science used to create genetically modified super soldiers, the next generation special forces. Throughout, powerful organizations and governments hide these advances from the public, turning progress into tools of control. So think about that. We mentioned a lot of this already, talking about how they can be good or bad. I mentioned that. How it's portrayed as medicine early on. Rob mentioned that. And then later on, it can be, created to, make super soldiers or whatever. And it all sounds very much like CRISPR technology. But what was Kojima doing making games about CRISPR technology and cloning back in the 80s and the 90s? So if you say, the thing I'm trying to say is, what if Kojima is trying to tell us truths that are hidden from the general public that he somehow has knowledge or access to, but he portrays it through fiction? Think about it. He uses fiction to show us genome soldiers, drones, and shadow power. If you say that in a research paper, you might get silenced or heckled or, laughed out of academia. But if you say it in a video game, you get called a genius. So my question for you guys is, what do you think about my crazy conspiracy theory here? Do you think Kojima was actually predicting the dangers of the Human Genome Project and the futures of CRISPR? Or do you think he was just telling a good story and it's all just a big coincidence? Let's start with you, Rob, because I know you love how much I love Metal Gear.
Yeah, I do. No, I don't. I don't. I don't think Mr. Kojima was. I think Kojima is just maybe he's in tune with the wackiness that goes on in the world, so he knows how to write a story involving. Because some people can see into the future a little bit, and it's not really hard to, especially in that era of like DNA and things like that. It wouldn't be hard to be like, hey, here is a way for us to edit the human genome. Like that's just basic science fiction, to be quite fair. That's basic. That's like science fiction 101. I mean, if you look at some of the older movies like The Fly, for instance, but that's gene manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't think Kojima's is our herald that's going to bring in the saving of the world via his games. No, because you just end up delivering a package for an hour and a half.
He
So no,
predicted exoskeletons.
I don't. I mean, that's automatons, which were talked about in Islamic folklore. So I mean, nothing new under the sun.
Yeah,
as the adage goes. So no,
that's
I don't think Kojima is our Nostradamus, if you were.
But here's the interesting thing for me, though, that I'll rebut you with is you've always heard that classic theory about, science fiction and Hollywood and the government always being about 20 years advanced and Hollywood telling us the true technology. And I personally, for one, actually believe in that because, as I've stated before, like with Hideo Kojima, going back to my favorite example, in Metal Gear Solid, he was talking about stealth technology back in the 80s. So what if, there actually was stealth technology that long ago? Because regardless of whether it's, Hideo Kojima, Alien, or whatever else, you're interested in, Mass Effect, Halo, whatever science fiction you're personally interested in, it seems very interesting to me that by the time it becomes reality in the real world, it always seems to line up with the science fiction. Do you not find that a little strange?
No, not at all. It's just I think there's stories that get put out in like old serial pulp magazines would have stories like this, where they had the death beam and they had they had the disappearing man and they had all this because the invisible man's basically cloaking technology.
Yeah.
If we really want to dive into it, sure, he experimented on himself, but it's a good metaphor for cloaking technology. So I just think that people, as technology advances, you start thinking in tune with the technology, right?
Yeah.
Of course, people back in England back in the day, they didn't have the ability to think like that, but they had science fiction. They just had to adopt their times to said science fiction, almost steampunk style. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, I think it just depends, man. You have Roman science fiction, which is like one of the earliest forms of science fiction about a UFO, I believe.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense. Like if you're standing around, you're looking up at the sky, like, I wonder if there's anything out there. I don't care what era you live in. You can live all the way back in like 2 BC, right? You're going to look up at the sky and wonder if you're the only thing there.
Yeah. And
So
like
no, I
Go
think a
ahead.
lot of this stuff is just it's already been done. We just don't see it because we don't look for it. But if we look for it, we'll see that this author wrote a book about camouflage, years and years ago. I mean, what are invisibility spells in Dungeons and Dragons games if not camouflage?
Yeah. And my thing is, I admit that people have written about this for long periods of time, but what stands out to me is what's really interesting is how the reality always matches the science fiction, like even in terms of after we get the technology, like, okay, in terms of stealth technology, it refracts the light around the user to make them invisible. That's how they said it would work in the science fiction. But who's to say that the science fiction always has to line up with the actual science once we discover it? Like, why don't we say that the stealth technology in real life works by a different way? Why does it always have to line up with the science fiction? But I'm spending too much time on this, so I'm going to go ahead and, move on, and we'll let Spider speak about his opinions.
One thing to remember is that many people who write good science fiction, because there's a lot of really bad science fiction out there. There's a lot of Sci-Fi Channel stuff that's just straight garbage that doesn't follow any known laws of science or anything. It's just, okay, here's the monster, it was made by this, and then whatever. Rob, you're on mute, so I can't hear you.
I said Taco Man versus Shark Burger.
Yeah,
a sci-fi original movie.
Sounds about right.
But for good sci-fi, a good sci-fi writer generally is a pretty smart person who knows some science. And that's how they're able to write science fiction, because they have something to base it off of.
Yes.
And they can not only see trends in a limited span. I'm not saying they're all fortune tellers and future seekers, but a good science fiction writer will look at the technology that's in development now and think, what would happen if that advanced to this level 10, 20, 30, 100,000 years later?
Yes.
How's it going to look? This is what I think it's going to look like. And frequently that's the path that things take, because some of this stuff is predictable. We are going to make advances in certain areas over a certain period of time. It's just when it's going to happen. Other times it's less predictive and more reactive. Somebody will write a fantastic story, and then maybe some scientist who's into science fiction, but who's on another level of engineering, will say, hey, I like this thing that he's talking about. Can we do that? Let's see if we can do that.
Right.
And so you have automatic doors from Star Trek. You have cell phones, similar thing, handheld communicators. You have all these things that somebody thought, you know what? This is my favorite show. I love this. What if we did that? What if we just came up with this? Let's make that. And I think a lot of it is reactive more than predictive. And I say that with another example. You mentioned Kojima, who I think is an intelligent person. I think he's a bit crazy.
That's what we love about him.
Insulting. I just think he's a bit nuts.
Yeah,
because of all of his games kind of don't make a lot of sense on some level.
That's one of our favorite things.
He's not the only person to have a vision of a future where something is certainly extremely plausible and is then happening. Pivot to one of my favorite authors, the late Michael Crichton, who most people know him from things like Jurassic Park and various other things. But he wrote a book. It was one of his last books before his death, called State of Fear. It is a fantastic book. It is set in near future but modern times. So there might be a little bit extra tech, but not too much. He was very in tune with DNA and different things, of course, from Jurassic Park and things that he'd researched. And State of Fear was about eco-terrorism and how people were going to try to influence governments and influence corporations and populations by initiating natural disasters to occur. Like they'd make floods happen in an area that shouldn't be flooded with ground shaking tech through an earthquake, or they'd make mudslides, or they'd do, weather modification without the HARP stuff.
Yeah.
And it was all designed to keep people in a perpetual state of being afraid of the technology, of being afraid of science going too far, of being afraid of this and afraid of that. And instead of trying to understand it, giving it to governments, saying, you guys take care of it because we're afraid of it. You'll protect us. And I'm talking about it too simply, but it's a fascinating book. And it was, again, very predictive. The book came out, and now we're at a level where, with what happened between 2020 and 23, it is a perfect example of creating a state of fear. It is exactly the same scenario. Instead of eco-terrorism, it was viral. And you can say what you want about what all that was. We're not here to talk about that particularly, but it's pretty clear that some people have a pretty good idea of the direction where things are going to go. And while they don't know exactly, and it's not really predictive, they're just very intelligent people, and they have some very good analyses of where we are and what we're doing and who you might be able to trust and who you might not be able to. And frequently that thing can come true, but it doesn't mean that they're Nostradamus. It doesn't mean that they were predicting the future. It just means they were a little ahead of the curve than the rest of us. They saw things coming based on data and trends. And so I see your point.
Yeah.
And I can definitely understand what you can take away from that. I'm not 100% in agreement with it, but I can say that he probably is a very smart person. He pays a lot of attention to trends and to tech and to things going on around him. And he's extremely observant. And it's the people who are very observant who write things and make games and do movies who give you that impression. That seem like they're predicting the future when really it's something inevitable that's going to happen, and they just happen to be a little bit ahead of the rest of us on catching on.
Yeah, and let me clarify: I'm not merely suggesting that these people, be it Kojima or anybody else, are predicting the future necessarily. I'm suggesting that the technology that they write about that seems to predict the future later on, I'm trying to suggest that technology already exists when they write about it, but it's not privy to general public knowledge.
To play back off of your idea that 20 years technology comes out 20 years later, I get it.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to
I get it. I get what you're trying to say.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. Finally, we're going to talk about Dolly the sheep and organ cloning. So this one I actually am going to share because it does have a photo with this one. So let me get this up.
So yeah, cloning. I remember when Dolly was a big thing when we were younger.
Yep.
There we go.
1 year
Dolly.
after Dolly.
Yep.
What's the date on that bad boy?
Let's see. This is July 5th, 2016.
So you're looking at what, 96?
Yeah, I think so. This was from 2016.
Yeah, 96.
So yeah, 20 years before that.
Woo, 96.
So tonight we're going to talk about that. As we just said, in 1996, Dolly the sheep became the first mammal cloned from an adult cell. Since then, cloning has shifted away from whole organisms and toward therapeutic cloning, organs, tissues, and body parts. If the Human Genome Project gave us the recipe book, Dolly proved that we could bake the cake, as it were. Pun fully intended. Family friendly, though. So tonight we have this quote from the article here. Says, cloning's biggest impact, several researchers say, has been in the stem cell advances it has sparked. Stem cell biologist Shinya Yamanaka noted that Dolly's cloning motivated him to develop induced pluripotent stem cells from adult cells, work later rewarded with a Nobel Prize. These iPS cells can mature into many cell types, effectively turning back the developmental clock. Because they are artificially created and can have a variety of futures, they're called induced pluripotent stem or IPS cells. Dolly was the spark, but the fire now lives in more precise targeted biomedical cloning. So Dolly wasn't just a one-off sheep. She set off the chain reaction that gave us stem cell tech and even organ growth in rats, such as ears, well, ears is about all I know of right now, to be honest. But I'm sure they're getting around to working on more stuff. If anyone knows any better, let us know. But that makes me wonder if Kojima predicted the genome soldiers and clones years ago. Are we already watching the fiction catch up to reality? So, what do you guys think about this? Is, all this stuff a miracle medicine or a dangerous step towards something uncanny in creating clones and, all the gene therapy and everything else? Rob?
I think it's good for people that whose organs don't work very well.
Yeah.
It's things like that that I'm looking forward to seeing. The one thing I'm not looking forward to seeing is because people are people and they'll do people stuff.
Yeah.
What they do to those organs, what do they encode inside of those organs? You know what I mean? Is it
Like
going to
the
be
DNA?
yes? Like what do they
Yeah.
put inside of those organs and just stuff like that? Normal stuff that people like us think about.
Yep. And Spider, what do you think?
I think the potential for really good health for a lot of people is really good.
Yes.
Really excellent. I don't want to overuse the word good. Good,
Yeah.
good, good, good. But and I say that because when you do an organ transplant, first there's a limited quantity of those to go around. Yes, there are billions of people on the planet, but how many people are those going to be a match to you?
Yes.
And even if it is a match, there's always the chance that your body's still going to be like, hey, this don't belong to me. I don't
Reject
want
it.
that. Get it out.
Yeah.
And then it's going to cause you more harm than good because that can mess up your other organs in the rejection. So being able to grow a new one from your own cells is
Yes.
a lot more handy. It's a lot more likely that your body's going to be like, okay, I recognize this. I've seen
Yep.
this before. All right, we could use another one. But then Rob made a great point because people are people. I'm a drinker.
Yeah.
If I drink and my liver needs replaced and they replace my liver with a nice new clone liver, am I going to stop drinking? Knowing myself,
Probably not.
So will I ruin that liver too? Probably. Will they
Just get
give me
another
another
clone.
one? Expense.
If you can afford it.
Expense is the other thing. And we have a lot of different sci-fi stuff talking about the various things that happen if you cannot afford a new organ or if you get one and then cannot afford your payments. There's plenty of things about people coming to repossess your organs, which is basically murder you and take them back. There's if they get to the point where they can control the DNA with data, they can just inset it with a kill switch. Like, you didn't pay your bill, you're 8 months behind, we're turning it off. Your liver don't work no more. Good luck. So, and that's of course science fiction stuff. That's stuff that's getting kind of like, okay, maybe we're getting a little bit wacky on it, but the potential, because again, healthcare is a business.
Yes.
It is not going to change. At this point, it is always going to be a business. There's no going backwards. And so it's all going to be based on money and costs and everything else. And so you're looking at something that can provide life-saving help for a lot of people, far beyond what we can do right now with other traditional methods. But you're also looking at the expense of how many of those people will be able to afford to do this. How many smokers are going to ruin multiple sets of lungs and then they can't do anything else.
Right.
And so, and our insurance companies, is an insurance company saying, well, we see that you have emphysema in your lungs and you want to get new cloned lungs. Well, what are the chances that you're going to still have emphysema because you're going to keep on smoking? Do you promise to stop smoking? Well, we don't believe you. We're denying your transplant. or we're denying your regrowth. It's the same kind of thing.
Or they just make them sign a contract.
Yeah, and if you breach your contract and have a smoke, well, then they don't have to deal with you anymore. They don't have to cover you anymore.
Yep.
So I want to be optimistic about it. I want to be hopeful about it because I think the potential for it is great. There's so many people born with congenital heart disease and just things that they have no control over, that they're just born with things that don't work right in their body. And this could really potentially help them. But will the cost of having to cover the abusers
Outweigh the other one?
else?
Yeah.
Because
It
you're going
could
to have to cover all that stuff, and then other people are going to have to foot the bill.
And then how do you decide who gets and who doesn't? That's another issue we need to thoroughly vet to see if, okay, so you only drink one drink every 5 months. 5 drinks every day. Who do we cover? Do we cover the guy who drinks once every 5 months, or do we cover the everyday drinker? Because it's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be cheap.
It's the difference between somebody just going out casually, having a drink every so often, and a guy like me who's probably risk. I call myself a risk because I'm costing more money because I'm causing more damage.
Yes.
And so it's all going to be monetary. It's all going to be economical, and that is going to bring the entire thing down. And will it still be worth it in the end? I hope so.
Yeah, I do too. I have optimism for it. Yes.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm cynical, but I am still optimistic that we can hopefully overcome enough of that to help more people than we end up harming.
And that's actually very, very good points that you've provided, because I was trying to look it up a second ago, but the article, of course, they want you to pay and become a member. They wouldn't let me read the whole article on Vox. But there was this story I heard recently, if we want to look deeper into it, about an about a company that recently had, it's very complicated stuff, but someone had a brain injury and they were basically brain dead, essentially. And this company basically came through and helped them restore their brain and help them continue living, and then the company went bankrupt and they basically revoked access to the brain, that stuff that helped them. And they were like, yeah, we're just revoking access. And because the way that I found out about this was I was actually watching Black Mirror, which had an episode that had stuff like this, and I was looking up content about the episode, and I actually stumbled across a news story about a real-life equivalent of what happened. But I need to do deeper research on that before
proprietary technology and proprietary information. That's what it is, because these are businesses rather than purely healthcare. They own the patents. They own rights.
Yeah.
So one company might own the patent to regrowing your liver. One company might own the patent to regrowing your lungs.
Yep.
And it's all Nintendo.
And if one of those companies goes bankrupt before selling the rights off to do that, then nobody
you're left holding the bat. You're left holding the,
somebody else will develop new technology or try to buy the patent from whatever's left of the estate, and then we already know how that kind of thing goes. So there's massive legal things that last for decades almost on some of these things. So it is a valid point.
And it's a medical nightmare, to be honest.
And like another theoretical side of it for me is like, one of my biggest concerns about getting something like that is like, on the one hand, I love technology, AI, robots, all this stuff. So I'm like, I think it'd be really cool and awesome. But on the other hand, I also acknowledge that if I get a brain implant, someone could just, hack into my brain, give me certain thoughts and make me do certain things,
Possible, sure.
And who's going to be able to stop that? And because, in the world of hacking, it's like, whatever it is, no matter how safe it is, it's only a matter of time. I mean, PlayStation gets hacked, every single year?
To an extent.
But you have to understand, too, with that kind of stuff, a mental mind hack would be a wild idea. Like, that's very science fiction.
Yeah, it is. But, I mean, so is the idea
impossible. It's not possible.
I think science fiction is the idea of having a brain implant in your head that allows you to do all this stuff in the first place.
I mean, Cyberpunk, they had a little brain thing there. So
That's exactly what I'm
I
getting
see
at.
it. I could see it as a possibility, but on that same token, it's hard to. I think it'd be hard to meld brain and machine.
Yeah.
Right
But-
now, I'm not saying it's not possible, but I just don't see it right now. I could be wrong. They could already have
Isn't
that
that what
technology.
Neuralink is, though?
Ben, how good did that do? Is everybody talking about it? Is everybody out getting
No.
Neuralinks? No.
No, not yet. But
Not yet. Not yet.
maybe
You're
in the
right. Not
future.
yet. Maybe in the future. Sure.
Yeah. Like in a theoretical aspect.
Yes, I could see it. You know, I probably wouldn't because I don't want my brain being controlled.
Now,
Because I feel like that's something that would happen. I feel like that's like
that's pretty much what I'm getting at. Yeah.
right out of a mad scientist's like playbook. You know what I mean? I got all the brains now.
Just make your own army.
The other thing there too is because the things are controlled by things that you think, we don't always control the things that we think.
Yeah.
We
Talk
not.
about ADHD.
Yep.
Got thoughts all over the place.
Talk about them intrusive thoughts.
You're bouncing all over the place. You can be suddenly open up people's social media pages in your brain that you didn't really want to talk to, but you had a thought about them, and then there they are, and now you're put in kind of a bad place. You're in a bad mood because there's this person that kind of sucks, and I didn't want to actually pull them up, and there they are. Or you're thinking about, oh man, there was some bad thing that happened on the news. I don't really want to think about that, but you've already thought about it. And now
then you're in trouble.
Images of tragedy and death and crashes and things. And it just depresses you, and you got to have a huge amount of mental control.
And it's amazing that we're actually talking about this because they actually made an anime just like this. It had this thing called the Sybil system, and it had a smart gun, and when they would point the weapon at the at the perpetrator, the criminal, whatever, the weapon would be able to read their mental state and give it a number. And if it was above a certain threshold, you were fine. If it was below a certain threshold, the gun would paralyze you with a shock. And if your number was really, really low, nope, you're done. It would like explode you entirely. And so, this might sound like science fiction and it might sound like crazy stuff, but we're getting really, really close if we don't already have this level of technology. I mean, think about it. They're putting AI surveillance cameras in different states, all this stuff, and they're trying to get the age restriction all over the place and the government ID to access all these different websites. They're heading towards that system, I believe. And AirPods. I love my AirPods, but I admit they're very dangerous in terms of data privacy because Apple claims that they don't use this and they just got it as a theoretical thing. But if you look it up, Apple actually does have a copyright. Well, not a copyright, a patent on technology for the AirPods that will allow it to read your mind. And how can they make a patent of technology that does not exist?
Placeholder.
Placeholder.
A lot of companies do that. A lot of companies will have an idea that they 100% think this could happen in the near future. We don't want our competitors to get it. Let's get it. And they put a patent on it. Or sometimes they'll say, oh, well, we're putting a patent on this to keep people from developing this technology because it's dangerous. And they'll pretend they're being altruistic. And half of that is stuff that's never going to be developed anyway.
Ever.
It's just them trying to be like, yeah, of course, we're not going to let anybody do this because that's how nice we are. Buy our new product, $100 a pop every week. But, subliminal messages through earpods could be a thing. We deal with that kind of stuff with TV. You never really the stories of being controlled by the television go back to the invention.
Since its inception.
Project Mockingbird.
Invention. So even through the radio. Some people believed if you listened to the radio too closely, then the radio waves would get in your brain and they would control you. And theoretically, again, based on frequencies, it could be possible. Has anybody done it? I don't know. I don't feel like I'm being controlled, but I don't watch a lot of TV. So
it depends on if you believe in Havana syndrome or not.
and it's all different things. So
Yep. A lot
as
of it is
much
very
as
theoretical.
it all comes back to costs again, though.
Yep.
Yeah,
Because
what's cost effective?
getting implanted with something, and then whether a company is really interested to go that degree of control
Yeah.
and put that much money into it. Because as much as we might see Apple and Disney and some of these ads as the evil corporations, they're less interested in controlling people as they are with making money off of you.
But what
Facts.
if
Money,
the
Facts.
money and the control come hand in hand and they're being
maybe,
paid massive amounts of money by other higher
mm,
ups to get that data?
maybe, but at the
That's a
same
tough
time,
one.
again,
That's a tough.
they want to make the money more than they want to do anything else,
Yeah.
and they will cut
Yes,
corners. They will cut
there it
every
is.
corner that they
Yeah.
can to
That's
make
it.
that money. And
Yep.
so if they get full control over somebody and then the government steps in and says, "Great, thanks a lot. This is perfect. We're going to privatize this for the government. It's
Yep.
federalized." They make no more money. So they do
None.
not want to make something that's foolproof
Yep.
that the government can take.
But my theory is, what if they don't think that far ahead, and then when the government comes and tells them, we'll give you a massive amount of money to do XYZ once, or, whatever organization, shadow organization, whatever, comes and gives them that order once, as you said, the company is only thinking about now. I want money now. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. And then after, later on, if it's a very powerful organization like, Blackstone, BlackRock, something like that, with all their hands in all these different pockets around, or even just someone trying to blackmail them, there's all sorts of, theoretical possibilities, and why they could accept this. And then later on, if it's a powerful enough force, they could just be like, okay, we're done with you, so you can go do what you want, but yeah, we're not paying you anything else. And they don't really have a choice. But like I said, this is all highly theoretical stuff anyways.
I'll give you an example that refutes it that's happening right
Okay.
now, that shows that corporations will always cut the throat of a government if it's in their best interest.
I love
Yes.
this example. I think I
And
know where you're
it's
headed.
because
Yep.
within the 2020 to 2023, when all the virus stuff was going on, there was a massive push from the federal government at the time to block certain information or to stop people from discussing certain information, whether it was
Yep.
true or not. And I'm not going to talk about the
Yeah.
validity of the information itself. I'm just going to say a lot of people got silenced, a lot of platforms got taken down very recently. And you can say it's just because of a switch in government regime, whatever you want to call it, but it's still a big shift that shows that the corporations are kind of like, well, we made a bad call. We're not going to do that again. Facebook's parent company Meta and YouTube are both reinstating people who were deplatformed for these things
Yep.
during that time and reinstating their monetary funds, not giving them back pay, of course, because you wouldn't do that,
Yeah.
but allowing them to monetize and get back on, allowing people into the revenue stream. And I guarantee you that the next time a government steps in to say, we don't like this trend that's going on, we want you to stop people from talking about it, I guarantee you a lot of these people are going to be like, nah, we got screwed last time. We
Yep.
lost money. We lost people. We lost this.
Yep.
Nah, we're not doing it again.
Yep. Facts.
And
Facts.
I don't think governments will be able to muscle their way in and stop that at
No.
this point. I think the damage was done to a certain extent. The economical damage has overridden everything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's evidence right now that's showing that the paradigm is changing, that the outlook is shifting, which is
Yes.
kind of also unfortunate because it means corporatization is once again on the rise and the
Yeah.
corporation grabbing the power back. And,
Yeah.
it's tough to root for either government or corporation because they kind of both suck. But
Yes.
right now I'm in the corporation side on this aspect because there's times where you just got to be like, no, you can't tell us to do this. You can't tell us not to do this.
Yes.
It is what it is. It's out
Yes.
there. So information is a key component of that. So that's my take. I think that's
Yeah.
going to set precedent for many years to come.
Yep. And so, final thing I want to ask your opinion on tonight is the future of identity. At some point, in the future, if people do start getting, all these, cybernetic limbs and brain enhancements and augmentations and gene therapy and everything else, at some point, or let me rephrase it, at what point, in your opinion, does it become no longer you? At what point do you become something or someone else? Let's go ahead and start with you, Rob. What do you think?
The minute you try to override your logical and emotional centers with chips and things, I think that's when you don't become you anymore. You're just
Okay.
becoming whatever. I don't see this happening, by the way, at least not in our lifetimes in that regard. But I think once you lose self, um, that's it. Like that,
Yeah.
it's a lost cause. I think once you lose self to whatever technological paradigm you consider, I just don't. Yeah, for me, it's self. It's
Yeah.
losing self. You can still get your arms and legs replaced, right? And you're still going to be you. You still have you. But once you lose like the
The
human
mental.
being aspect of yourself, that's when
Yeah.
that's when I think you transcend into a worse predicament.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it, I think. What do you think, Spider?
Well, it gets into a bit of philosophy. It gets into the concept of, does your soul require a biological space?
No.
Or
I
if a
personally
soul
don't think.
exists, can it inhabit a computer space? So if you not just saying, because you can say, well, I transplant my brain into a robot, it's still a
Yeah.
physical brain, I still have a soul.
But is
You
it
can say
still
that.
you?
I would accept that argument on some level. But what if you download yourself into a complete different shell? What if you digitize yourself completely and put yourself into an automaton or something of that nature, or even an entire different cloned body? What if you have an entire cloned body that's got no brain activity? It was created completely to be a blank slate, because there's some of that in fiction. You put your mind into it. Are you still the same person? Do you still have a soul?
Ooh.
Is it bound to your mental state, or is it bound to a physical object? And it's an interesting concept, because that defines kind of what you are. Now, there's some games that I've played that explore that, and I don't want to go too far into it. I'm just going to make a couple recommendations. The game Soma has an excellent outlook on this, because it deals with exactly having your brain scanned and then being put into a digital environment. And the game grapples multiple times with, which is the real you. Are you the person
Yeah.
who had the scan to begin with? Are you the scan itself? Are you the next physical being walking around that has the scan? Because you don't transfer the scan between different things, you just make a new copy. And
And
the character struggles with that. He struggles with the fact that, I've copied myself from this. Is that still me? Should that still be alive? There's two of us. It's a paradox now, which gets into the idea of cloned people.
that's
And
what I was getting at.
so it's fascinating. Without giving away too much of the game, one of the plot devices is that some of the scientists working on the technology, you find story logs of what happened to them, and some of them thought, well, the only way to make sure I'm still me is to make sure there's only one copy of me. So as soon as their brain scan gets finished, they off themselves. So their scan lives on because that's them,
Ah,
not the one that's left behind. And it's,
kind of
what
dark.
is it true? Is it a real? It's
Yeah.
tough to think about. How would you feel about it in that situation? Um, and the other thing is, what if you just get so obsessed with adding to yourself that you make yourself into something that's not you anymore, even if you have the same mind, even if you have the same brain? um, it's kind of an offhand plot device, but in Borderlands, the pre-sequel, you play one of the bad guys in that game, because
Yeah.
the 4 people that you play in that game are the 4 bad guys that are in Borderlands 2 later. And one of the people you can play, he's an enforcer, he's a military guy, and he has an addiction to cybernetics. And by the time Borderlands 2 comes out, he's augmented himself so much that there's almost nothing of him left, just his face and part of his upper body attached to all these cybernetic things. And he doesn't sound like he has a metallic voice. He has different movements. And while they don't get into it too much in the games, because Borderlands is kind of a goofy game series, right? It's not known for deep philosophical concepts. But the story there, while brief and not mentioned a lot, is kind of interesting. Because he started out in one way and he became something else that was worse than what he was, but it's what he wanted. So was he still him from his viewpoint? Maybe. But was it better for him in the end? Well, he was a boss fight, so you killed him anyway. But not the point.
Yeah.
There are going to be people who are going to want to keep adding designer parts. And at what point do you stop? At one point, do you become not you anymore? And that's like anybody with an addiction, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, that's getting real, philosophically deep.
Yeah.
The end there. But that's what we're going to have to keep an eye on with some of the technology, because some of it can help you, but at some point, too much is too much.
Everything in moderation. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the closing. So tonight, we've touched on corporations buying DNA, the Human Genome Project laying the blueprint, Kojima may be warning us through games, and Dolly proving that we could clone life itself, as well as, the organs on the rats, of course. These threads all circle one question: who controls the code of life, and what happens when that control shifts from science to profit, or even power, and when all three interact with each other? How dangerous can that truly become? We'll leave that for you to decide, but one thing's clear: cloning isn't just science fiction anymore. It's here, and it's uncanny. We'll let Rob take us out. Oh, if he can remember to turn his microphone back on.
As always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week for another Steven presentation. So I hope you guys are ready for that.
Double the Steven for half.
Double the Steven.